I see the directive principles of state policy as the soul of the Indian Constitution. The fundamental rights may be the heart, but the directive principles are the soul. The directive principles mark out the Indian Constitution from almost any other. Every constitution has its set of fundamental rights, and constitutions are about legal frameworks and the laws, what the do's and don'ts, primarily the don'ts, and the difference is that the directive principles of state policy are not about what can't be, what is. They're about what should be, what ought to be. They offer you a vision of a society. That, I think, makes both the directive principles and the Indian Constitution somewhat special. Look at the ones that are violated. How the directive principles begin by telling you, of course, this is the point at which some smart lawyer gets up and tells you they are not enforceable in a court of law. It usually means the person hasn't read the rest of the directive principles. Because the clause that says that they are not enforceable in a court of law says, I quote, "The principles herein laid down are nevertheless fundamental in the governance of the country, and it shall be the duty of the state to apply these principles in making laws." Fundamental to the governance of the country. The next line says, "The state shall strive to promote the welfare of the people by securing and protecting as effectively as possible a social order in which justice, social, political, and economic shall inform all the institutions of national life." Exactly the opposite has happened in the last 20 years, when inequality has grown faster than it ever has in our history as an independent nation, faster and is at worse levels than at any time since the British Raj. The directive principles also say, "The state shall in particular strive to minimize inequality." Shall in particular strive to minimize inequalities in status, facilities, and opportunities, that not only amongst individuals, but also amongst groups of people residing in different areas and engaged in different vocations. To my mind, Article 39 is more important than any of the fundamental rights. A, women and men equally have the right to adequate means of livelihood. B, and this is critical, B and C are critical to looking at the violations of the last 20 years. Article 39B says that the ownership and control of material resources of the community, are so distributed as best to subserve the common good. And you've had greater concentration of wealth and deeper levels of inequality than at any time in your independent history. A huge violation. But the next principle, I think even more important, C, that the operation of the economic system does not result in the concentration of wealth and means of production to common detriment. The Constitution lays down that the operation of the economic system should not result in the concentration of wealth and the means of production to the common detriment. Day before yesterday, Forbes magazine declared that the 100 richest Indians were now all dollar billionaires. We are now the third ranking nation in the world in dollar billionaires. Maybe second after the United States. But I think Russia is slightly ahead. However, the cumulative wealth of our billionaires is far greater than those of the Russians. Meaning, forget the per capita income of the masses, the per capita wealth of our billionaires is far greater than those of Russia and China. Those guys are worth about $1 to $1.5 billion each. Ours are worth about $3.5 billion each. And of course, there's no comparison. The Chinese billionaires are all in the 1.2 billion. And where Russia is concerned, there is our obvious moral superiority. At the end of every 5 years, Russia sends all her billionaires to prison. We send ours to parliament. A mature democracy.